Chapter 4. Howl. In my exceedingly long existence, I have seen countless lives lost, and in time, I have learned to accept that this is the way of things here. Yet the profound nature of the relationship I enjoyed with Lilith was like no other that I had ever experienced up until then. You see, in the garden, I was the child of the Omna, so I had never experienced the joys and tribulation of being responsible for another life. When I saw the death of Lilith through the eagle's eyes, I suddenly understood why the Omna were so willing to sacrifice themselves for the sake of saving me. Lilith was my child. I raised her into adulthood and taught her how to be a great and respected leader. I loved Lilith and still do. She was the first of my children, my legacy. So it should come as no surprise that my actions with regard to her death were not entirely motivated by mental fortitude, but rather the love and devotion of a father for his daughter. When Lilith left with Eve, I did not take the journey with her, but not for my own regard. You must understand that there was only one person that Lilith truly trusted in this world, and that was me, even though at the time I was not technically a person. Due to my present form, Lilith chose to take Aton as her king and requested that I remain behind with him to guide and help him lead her people. While Aton was the best choice for king among Lilith's people, the options were far from multitudinous. Aton was a man of weak character who could easily be influenced by the people. After getting knowledge of Aton's nature, I decided it best not to bother speaking to him, as I did with Lilith. Instead, I took advantage of his weak will and simply manipulated the boy into making the right decisions regarding his people. Yet, truth be told, I was much less concerned with the welfare of the village than I was with Lilith. So I spent a great deal of time watching over the ladies as they made their journey. On the day the coldness rose up from the land, I gazed at my wondrous Lilith with the eyes of an eagle to see her moment of triumph. Seeing what she was capable of filled me with such a sense of pride. Lilith was truly magnificent beyond all expectation. Loving, kind, strong, and fearless. I had done well with this one. Yet only moments later, the cold fused with her, and all that pride turned to sorrow. Then to see that smile as Eve gazed upon her handiwork, I was enraged and started to run. Only moments after Lilith's demise, I ran out of the village without regard for her people, and kept running for over 3 years to reach where Lilith stood frozen by the treachery of Eve. I remember the moment I laid eyes upon Lilith's form standing there at the riverside. Her once lush, beautiful olive skin turned a pale gray in the mid-morning's light. After running for so long, my body hadn't much strength left in it. So I lay at her feet and allowed my body to rest while my spirit kept a watchful eye on the sky. When I saw the moon was full, I awoke to begin my work. As I stood in the clearing next to Lilith, I dug my paws into the soft ground, and with all the strength of my spirit I howled at the moon. While I generally shy away from boast, my spirit is pure and intensely strong. It is what allowed me to run for a full 3 years without food, drink, or rest to rescue my Lilith. While my form has been altered several times, my spirit that was crafted before even the first of the angels is, and always will be, the same. So it should come as little surprise that my howling at the moon produced significantly more results than your average jackal. You see, all the planets that were to give birth to life have at least one moon, although their true purpose is yet to be discovered by man. While over time the Omna thought that a few extra moons would look nice on certain planets, there was always one that was assigned purely to tap into the full force of the planetary energy. This was sort of a emergency solution for any unforeseen event that required more power than any one being could possess in corporeal form for any extended period of time. It was my hope that when God created this world, he had done so from the specifications created by the Omna. While this emergency plan was created largely to prevent events that would otherwise destroy the entirety of our planet, I knew it was the only way that I could ever hope to banish all the code of all the lands that had made their way into Lilith. I screeched an intensely energized howl into the air, and it rose up like a comet, striking the moon with enough force to create a crater. The moon shuddered and shook as it rang out like a giant bell so loudly that its resonance could be heard upon the earth. The oceans rose, and the earth quaked all over, sparking incredible winds that blew all across the lands. I focused my spirit to harness all the power that the moon had visited upon the earth. As I felt the power rising up from the earth into my body, the oceans quelled their uprising. The earth silenced its quaking. As I resonated with the power brought forth by the moon's energy, I turned my head towards Lilith and let out a howling shriek so loud that it was terrifying even unto the very forces of nature. The shriek I let out was so terrifying that the river behind Lilith split open, and all the grass and trees fell over and died from their fear. Yet the ice statue of Lilith remained. I looked upon my girl and felt the agony of defeat. A world's worth of power at my disposal, and I could do nothing to save Lilith. I was moments from tears when my shriek reached the sky and the darkness of night retreated for a moment. In the flash of light I saw that my work here had not been done entirely without results. Just a small sliver of Lilith's olive-colored skin had become visible around her fingertips. The cold hadn't been pushed out of her by my shriek as I had hoped, but it had been pushed back. With that bit of knowledge, I knew exactly what I had to do. Again and again I howled to the moon and shrieked at the frozen Lilith, and a little more of her revealed itself each time. Over and over again I repeated the process, and again the second night of the full moon, and the third night, each time gaining a little bit of territory on the code that enveloped Lilith. By the end of the third night, much of Lilith had been unfrozen, but not enough. So I waited until the next full moon and repeated the process. It wasn't until the third night of the third full moon that the cold had been pushed back far enough for Lilith to be revived. The cold had been pushed out of Lilith's body and now only resided in her hair. While I might have taken a moment to revel in my win, I knew that it had come at a terrible cost. Exciting the moon as I had done had caused tidal waves, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions globally, and the shriek I had produced had destroyed the lands around where Lilith stood. Today you call this area the Sahara Desert, but up until then it had been a wondrously wonderful and lush land. I myself was exhausted. Not my body, but me. Harnessing all that power for so long had taken its toll on my spirit. And for the very first time, I required rest. This was an all-new experience for me. In eons of life I had never been tired, never actually slept. But I knew that I would soon need to sleep. I walked over to Lilith's body, opened her mouth, and with the last bit of my strength, breathed new life into her, then passed out. I must say that sleeping, body and soul, was quite an experience. Being that it comes so naturally to all of you, I doubt you really appreciate it for what it is, an unadulterated window into your subconscious, or rather your mind telling you what you already know, but didn't know you knew. Immortal beings rarely sleep, you see. When we inhabit our corporeal form, it may need to rest from time to time, but our spirits remain active, sometimes leaving the form while at rest to wander the landscape, or simply watching over it until it awakens. Actually sleeping was a new concept to me, and one that I consider truly wondrous. In my resting state, I dreamed for the first time. My dream was of the past, of me playing with my creators in the lush, beautiful lands of Eden. We danced around a fire, in a circle, as we had done so many times before, singing, laughing, and rejoicing. Suddenly a screech was heard overhead, and we all looked up to see an eagle holding a snake in its claws. The snake bit the eagle, and it dropped from the sky into the fire. One of the Omna reached for the eagle, but the snake climbed out of the fire and bit his hand. The venom climbed up his arm into his body, turning him black, and he began blowing away bit by bit, as though he were made of ash. The snake, still burning, turned to the rest of the Omna, killing them one by one in the same manner. Finally, when there were none left, the snake turned to me. I looked into his eyes and knew instantly who he was. He went to strike me, and in that instant, I awoke. I can't say how long it was that I slept, but the terrain had suddenly changed from when I had laid down to rest. From a desolate desert to a delightful garden with fruits, and the river had been partially restored into a small lake. I looked over to my side where Lilith once stood and saw nothing. My girl was gone. Still awakening, I called into the ether for her and heard a response. "Behind you." I turned around to see Lilith climbing out of the lake, her beautiful body once again restored to perfection, all except for her hair, which stood frozen like a rock upon her head. Lilith walked out of the water and sat beside me. I laid my head on her lap as we communed once again. "I made this for you. I knew you would awaken eventually," she said as I lay there. I knew Lilith was very skilled in the teachings of the wise, but crafting an oasis from the sands of a desert was truly an astonishing achievement. I was still very tired, and I thought it best to keep the revelation of my dream to myself for the moment. In this world, it is rare to find a moment of peace, and I knew once I revealed to Lilith the true events that led to her icy imprisonment, the peace will be washed away from this lush land, replaced by the discontentment of betrayal. So I remained quiet in the oasis, listening to the waterfall as I lay across Lilith's lap.